So, UNRWA and the UN have kind of been giving conflicting guidance as to when they are going to, quote unquote, run out of funding for Palestinians in Gaza. You got into this issue a little bit yesterday when you talked about the U.S. funding. Does state have any clarity on how long it might be until UNRWA does actually run out of funding?
So we've seen what they've said publicly, and obviously we engage with them privately as well. I will let them speak to questions of both of their funding and when it will expire, because it's not just obviously a U.S. government issue. We are not the only funder of UNRWA. There are other countries that do as well. So I will let them speak to that. We don't have any independent information on that question.
But as the top donor, don't you have a sense of when they're using the funds from the U.S. and how, the timeline?
Of course we do, but as we are not, because we are not the only donor, we don't know necessarily when other countries are making their contributions, whether there are others that are pending. In the same way I talked about yesterday, how we had upcoming payments that were pending, that will be true for other countries as well. We don't have it's not an internal budget schedule for UNRWA that we keep at the United States. It's a question that they keep at UNRWA and the United Nations, so they're best to speak to that question.
Do you have any sense that, as the Secretary has now said, the Secretary General has now said that this could be, the U.S.'s pause on funding could be catastrophic for Gazans?
So what I would say to that is, first of all, to reiterate, as you've heard me say, as you've heard the Secretary say, and others inside the administration say, the work that UNRWA does is critical. It is critical that it's critical work to deliver food and water and medicine and other humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people. That said, the responses were, the allegations last week were incredibly troubling. And so it is exactly because the work is so important and the work should not be jeopardized that UNRWA needs to conduct, the United Nations needs to conduct a full investigation, respond as appropriate, and put into place measures to prevent such incidents from ever occurring again. The two, I don't actually, we get this question, I don't find the two in tension with each other. It is because the work is so important that we cannot allow it to be threatened, right? That UNRWA has to take this seriously. There has to be a real investigation. There has to be full accountability, and there have to be appropriate measures put in place to happen again. I think the two go hand in hand.
But just to follow up on that, Israel is saying that the UNRWA is fundamentally compromised. So you still stand by UNRWA in that context?
So we believe it's important that there be a full investigation and there be accountability and there be measures put in place, as I said, to prevent this from happening again. But at the same time, we think UNRWA's work is critical. And we believe that there is no other partner on the ground right now who can replace UNRWA and can deliver the humanitarian assistance. And I will say that in our conversations with the Israeli government, they have acknowledged to us at very senior levels that the work that UNRWA plays is important. Now, look, they have a long-standing dispute with UNRWA that goes back to well before October 7th, as I know you're aware of, Leon. And I'm sure that they will continue to have disputes with UNRWA that extend far beyond the end of this conflict. But I can tell you that in our conversations, they recognize the critical role that UNRWA plays, and that, importantly, there is no other humanitarian relief organization that can play that role in the short term.